Welcome in, everyone, to another edition of Reimagining Contentlayer with Effect. I'm your host, Max, and
And
Tim.
I'm also your host.
Um, yeah, so we were just getting ready to crack open. We were smart enough the last time we met to leave ourselves a little reminder file or to-do file to remind ourselves what we were working on. So Tim and I were just getting ready to crack that open and take a look at what the next steps were going to be for our Contentlayer rewrite. So Tim, I don't know if you already cracked open our to-do file.
I have cracked it open.
You have cracked it open. Okay. Pre-module. So the last thing I think we worked on was the TypeScript type generator, right?
Yeah, it would take a schema and generate TypeScript types for it.
Right. So do you think that it makes sense to
Type builder, we called it.
type builder? Yeah. So where do you think the next logical place to go is? Do you think it makes sense to do the DTS files, or should we create the actual modules, or what do you think?
I think if we start creating the modules, in the generated folder here. So we're outputting types. What are we outputting? This. Okay. Or did I add that?
I think we're outputting this right now.
Output folder types. Oh yeah. We are.
Yeah.
So we want to change that to a DTS file. And it looks like this is just the field. So we need to add the ID. Because if you look at the generated output, generated post, and then just one of these guys, we have fields emitter.
Right.
I think last time we briefly talked about that we don't have a schema for the emitter right now.
True.
So maybe first we get types looking like this, and then start working on the package.
That sounds reasonable. Do you think having a schema for meta is something we can build into the sources?
Yeah, I think that's probably the only place we can really put it. Source.
Yeah, so the out meta, basically.
Yeah.
The schema would be over meta, right? In this case, not the or no, it would be the output type, or no? No, it would be the meta.
Meta.
Yeah.
We've got this add meta function. If we do this, then we also need to modify a schema. So maybe meta will just be a fixed field. Yeah. So whatever meta we need add, we also need a schema for it to build the types.
Maybe the constructor for a source should take in a schema as well, and then that can be what we use to actually derive the shape of meta.
Yeah. So I think the actual meta schema should be on the output somewhere.
I guess this would be a schema from unknown to meta, right?
Yeah,
Or would it just be
that would just make it easier for us. meta, and then the context of never is good for us.
Yeah.
Or I guess it could just be an AST, but this is fun. On here, you'll need to have a schema. Or a
I thought we were fixing it to unknown though. No.
we'll just discard the other.
Clear.
Maybe use schema extend.
I think extend makes the most sense here, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess it will just start with an empty struct.
Right.
Extend. Does it have an overload? Is it dual? Yeah, it is dual. So
What's the error we're getting here?
what's that?
What's the error we're getting there?
I didn't read it.
Not assignable to something.
Fixed it.
Fixed it. No more errors.
Yeah, well, we're getting an error because to start with, the file system. So if we create a schema for file system editor,
Figure out what it looks like, the file system meta.
got all this stuff in it. So if we whoop, we're getting used to my new keyboard.
At least you don't have to manually push the comma button anymore.
Yeah. Option overall. Okay. So we already have name in here. And then we're declaring name again here. So we're overriding name.
It's probably fine.
So
Or this,
maybe we can just get rid of it.
well, is does path that parses name give you the base name, or like why did we even put that in there?
Nothing. Pass. What is name? Name
Oh,
is the
it's
base
the
name
copy
without
extension.
extension.
Yeah. So that's different than so base is actually the base name.
Yeah. It seems like it's redundant anyway. And if we explicitly type that as schema, not schema, And then in here we go.
As any.
Yeah. uh,
Maybe
very.
having done wrong is like just causing too many problems.
Was it?
I said maybe fixing it the input type to unknown is just causing too many problems.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'm just thinking about whether we have a generic for it, but we just don't use it.
I mean,
Meta.
is there ever going to be a situation where the input to the meta is going to be something that we need to transform? I feel like probably not.
Probably we just do any.
Because I mean, that's fine. It's just that the meta is something the source defines. So I feel like that's not really something necessarily exposed to the user.
Yeah, that will do. So we have a schema. When we really need the schema for the AST, we don't actually use it.
Right.
So maybe we just change this to AST.
Meta nasty.
This mid is nasty. AST. And I think that's schema AST now. Yeah.
Yes.
And that solves that issue. And then here we can go schema dot make start meta AST schema dot AST.
Wonder what extend doesn't. There's probably a lot of fanciness going on under the hood with extend, but
Yeah, there is. Uh, I guess if we just track like the fields,
say that again, Tim. Sorry.
we could just track the struct fields. So we make this it's a bit hard to type shape. Um, it's just continue. So in our type builder, we need to use that. We add schemas, and then we add built dot human.
Build or built?
Build. So I just spelled it wrong. We built document. Are we exporting that type somewhere? Document builder. Oops. Document builder. Yeah, that's it. Just did build again.
I didn't want to be annoying, but I didn't say any of this.
uh, and then here, I'm going to fix schema. So we have an ID field, which is a schema dot string. We have the fields, which is document dot fields, and then we have the meta, which will be schema dot make. And that was from the output, was it?
Yeah, I think it was meta AST.
What's the type here? Yeah, that's fine. Toggle return type. We don't need anything fancy here. We've got a type. Do we have type? Do we have a type dependency cycle here? No.
I don't think so.
So here we'll need the build document. We need to create the AST. Where is our go? Yeah. So we can get rid of what's he complaining about? Nothing.
He's still in there somewhere. There you go.
Alright, that's good. So here,
Oof.
instead of passing the document,
What's the issue on here?
we kind of want the meta schema to be part of the source type. So it's like, because currently it's in the output, but that's per entity or per actual document. But really the schema is, there's only one schema per source.
Could we? Doesn't the document define its own source?
Um, Admin. Yeah, let's get rid of that. So the emitter should conform to the source's schema. I think we're going to have to quickly update our source definition. So if we create a type ID for this, so to this one type, and then yeah, string dot string. We just want to copy this guy. Um, all right, let's try roll with it. So we'll just need to create a constructor. Stream schema. Don't need that anymore. But we do need to use our constructor here now.
Nice.
Where's our errors? Yeah. Does make the API for source not as nice, because before you could just use the stream combinator straight on it. But I'm not sure if there's any way around this. If we just add a combinator to easily transform the stream.
Like a
Yeah.
transwarably or upper.
I guess we would make it dual. So we would So we want something that can transform the stream. So it's using meta, context, e. This will be a function, exit stream, and returns a new stream.
I guess, yeah. We can just have like meta 2 and context 2, I guess, and then just merge them all.
Yeah. We can't do a meta 2 here, because then you'll need to add a schema for it.
So are we only doing this to allow stream transformations?
Yeah.
Like what stream transformation doesn't manipulate the meta, I guess.
Yeah, I guess the stream transformations, the main one is adding a plugin. But if we update the plugin signature to take in the source and return a new one, that's fine. And this could return new errors. So if we do,
I just find like these types of APIs to not be super helpful if we're not actually manipulating the output value, but
we'll be manipulating the context in the fields, but the fields aren't typed. So the plugins would probably use this quite extensively. How does that look? So it takes in the stream, brings a new stream with different context. Yeah, that's fine.
I think the source output is incorrect.
Oh, yeah.
I think it should be
Context to
context. Is it like returning a brand new context, or are we merging?
yeah, it's a brand new context.
For errors,
So
we're
we're
not.
capturing the output of the new stream. Yeah, that looks right. Oh,
Should we not be merging errors then, at least?
no, because you could catch an error in your transformation. Uh,
Doesn't the signature basically say that your input stream can't ever, that error will never be surfaced?
what was it?
Unless you're just returning the same error type on the output. Like, I mean, I guess we can see what this how this feels, but I don't know. The signature looks strange to me.
It's a little bit different to like a map combinator, because essentially you're operating on the stream itself. So let's say I did stream.catch tag, then I would eliminate an error, and I want to capture that, and the error has been eliminated. So that's why we're not doing any merging, but we're just using the returned types from the new stream.
All right, we'll see how it I think that it makes sense. I want to see how it feels.
So we need to use this in source plugin now. And then here we're going to do source transform source. And then here we've got the previous source stream. And then we're returning a new stream with
Yeah, I get where you're going with this.
and then plugins are still things that take in the source and return a new source. So our config API hasn't changed. If we look at Contentlayer, yeah, this will still work. Okay. And then if we go to our type builder now, here we can revert to using the document. Can we do that? Source dot.
Here's
Or if we just
yeah, I guess you could copy the generic from document if you wanted to.
if we just go fields source. What is that? Meta source.
I think there's constraints on both of them.
Yeah.
Dude,
No one is really going to use this, so it's fun. And then here we want the meta schema.
That's the only reason why I thought you might want to like have the generic constraints because you probably would at least get the autocomplete for meta schema.
Yeah, I think this is. If we go source time. Let's have a look at this. Oh, yeah. Alrighty then.
I think even if you wanted to, you could just copy the generic input to document.
Yeah, we could do that. Just need to remove the variance annotations. We're not importing source. Okay. No, I got the next time. Fields. Document.
Document.
Document. Dococo. This is wrong now. What is that? What have we got? That looks fun. White space in here. That's what we are using source.
I think you just have the import type. That's weird.
Is that ESLint? Oh yeah, ESLint sometimes bugs out. I guess if we copy this, we'll render document.
So is this still a built document schema, or is this going to be like a document schema now?
This will return a built document schema, but now that the meta is in the source itself, we don't need the built document to generate the types.
Right, I got what you're saying.
And then we can remove all of this monkey stuff.
I'll miss document.
Yeah. No one loves that. And then we can get rid of that import. LSP restart, will that fix it? Who cares? I'm using ESLint D, I think it is, which is not part of the LSP.
Oh, right. All right. Yeah.
So this should be fine now. Document builder will change, I think. No, it's a we build. I can't see because of that thing. Packages. Let's see, alive bin. Error downloading config. File system.
File system's up. Hybrid.
We didn't add
Yeah, the
pipeable to source.
The Trojan.
That's not even in the type.
Shame on us, Tim. Really.
Shame on us.
Damn.
And then here we just add a function. We just add a source proto. And then just spread it and spread it like butter.
Like butter. Why doesn't it like that?
Probably because this guy.
Yeah.
I mean, we could get all fancy and make it proper. Stream. Or it doesn't have meta schema on it. And then 10, I think we should be able to drop that now. Yep. Okay. Expected stream.
Oh no.
Where would that be? Maybe on the config builder? No, module document builder. I'm pretty sure config builder, yeah, that just builds the config. Document builder reads the stream. On here, go through documents, output. So this should be stream.
I think my document.any type needs to be fixed. Somehow.
Yeah. What was that document?
I don't know if it can be
Any.
fixed. Because it takes the source as generic, I'm not sure it can be fixed. Or maybe we
What
can
you
just do it
can
as
do
source.
is
Source
make
in.
an interface. Somewhere. There we go.
Could we make
So
that?
that has the type ID on it.
I was gonna say we could pass the generic source with any. Would that work?
Yeah.
Like instead of
What
doing this, we could just
fields?
make the second generic parameter to document just source.any. Because that's basically what we're doing.
Yeah.
I think there's a source.any, unless I made that up. Source.any. Nice. Nice. Cool. Cool.
Right. Take 3. So running, starting, building. That's good.
Yeah. Nice.
All right. So add meta to types. How are we doing for time?
I think we still probably have like 20 or 30 minutes.
Okay. So if we go back to our to-do list, create modules. So now I've generated output. We've got this. I guess if we just start with outputting an array for each type.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Then we just dump it straight into the index. Or we just do generated.post.js.
Generated post.js feels good.
Yeah, let's do that. So if we go to document builder, So once we have a built document, we're just sending it straight to a storage service, which seems good to me. And then the storage service is responsible for getting it into the right format. It's just a document. I'm caching that. That's good then. Wouldn't want to generate a schema for every file.
Maybe we can. What do we want to be available in the generated module file for post? Probably an array of, for now, just an array of the post JSONs, right? Kind of like what the current content layer does, where it's just all posts or something like that.
It's the way that we built it now that we can't like collect an array because we're just writing individual documents right now.
So can't we just?
We'll need to perform a collection somewhere, probably in the document builder, and then this would accept an array. But when it comes to the caching part of it, that might be annoying because you kind of just want to invalidate a single document at a time.
I guess maybe we could start from what we want the output file structure to look like for the module, and then maybe like what the content of each file should work from there.
Yeah. So from like a caching point of view, you just want to kind of like only regenerate the index if you add or remove documents, but not change them.
Right.
And then swap out the individual files when their content changes.
Well, the problem right now is we're hashing based on
the ID, which is fun.
what's the higher hashed ID.
So if we have a new thing called like right IDs. And then that's kind of like that will be used to generate the index. And then in our document builder, we collect all the IDs per config. So here we have a config. And then we have a new set. And then every time we find an ID, we add it to that set. So I guess if we do like a run for each here. We collect all the IDs, and then when that stream finishes, we go effect dot that. storage dot write IDs, and then yeah, map effect. Kind of need like a tap effect concurrent.
Yeah. I've had a use case for that before too.
What can we do? I guess we could just do a good old.
You have to like do a storage.write and then effect.as.
Yeah.
That kind of doesn't feel good, but that's what we have right now. It'd be worse.
Could be worse, yeah. All right.
And so, what was your idea
Now,
with the?
so this is necessary so we can generate the index. The index file, which will reference.
And the index is literally just going to export all of the individual files.
Yeah.
Or, it's going to import all the JSONs and export them, or it's going to like import all like the post.js and all the other ones.
It'll import all the JSON file. Similar to how Contentlayer works right now.
Okay.
And that will work better with cache invalidation. So we don't have to regenerate the entire JSON array. We just have to update the exports, which will be cheaper.
I'm willing to see how it goes.
We're not really tracking if the well, we don't really have a way to track, but if a file was added, removed, or changed, I guess storage.write would be able to tell us that. Like if the file exists on the disk already, then we know it's a change. We're not really handling removals, tracking removals. So like if we remove a markdown document from the disk, we're not really tracking that right now and deleting the JSON file. We'll probably have to
So
tackle
this
that at some point.
is all happening assuming that the config file hasn't changed, right? This is like you added a new piece of content under the content directory that you're tracking or something, but you haven't changed the config file, right? That's what we're assuming at this current moment.
Yeah, so right now our sources don't really track changes. Oh, they don't.
Because in my mind, there's two times we want to perform some changes to the cache. One is if you change a document, but you don't change the config, right? If the config stays the same in the document, that's one type of cache invalidation we need to handle. The other type of cache invalidation that we need to handle is if you change the config, the whole cache needs to be busted. Like you basically need to regenerate everything. Right. Because
Yes.
if you change the config, you don't know. You have no way of knowing like what you in granularly can change with the document.
Well, the index file might not change, but all the individual documents might change. But right now we're not actually doing any watching of the actual content itself.
Right.
I guess that would be a responsibility of the source. So in here we would need to set up some watches and then emit output. Every time part of our content changes. And that would make the stream infinite.
Yeah. So that's like what I was thinking was like the content stream, as long as the config stays the same, the content streams from the sources are infinite.
Yeah.
Which does change what we need to do in the document builder.
Yeah. Which kind of means we need a way of indicating that kind of like a build is completed within the stream. Or we just need a way for a source to provide all the known document IDs, which might be better. Or we just track like the known list of IDs. So the first time it runs, you get everything. And then as changes come in, you kind of like add or remove IDs from the set.
That would actually solve the problem of tracking whether something's added, removed, or updated. We could use that method.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't have to rely on a file watcher to do that.
It does mean in source we'll need to change output to be like a union of like added, removed, or changed.
Are you thinking that we would track that mapping of like stuff we've seen versus stuff we haven't in the source or in the builder?
Oh, I guess we only need two states. So we need a state where we're emitting an updated document or a new one, or we're removing an ID. So then the document builder can track removal.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking that based on what you were saying, I thought you meant that the builder was going to track everything. Because if the source is
Or
just providing
the builder
a
can't
list of all
track
documents.
removals unless the source tells it that something's been removed.
Well, you had said that the source could emit all known IDs, which I mean is maybe less efficient than what we're doing now because we're just streaming in IDs as they come in.
Yeah. Well, the first time a source runs, it's going to emit everything. Or at least I think it should. And then from that point, you've built up enough of a picture to warn like diffing on this set. So the only thing that's missing from sources really is the ability to say like an ID has been removed from the source.
So you're
I
saying
guess.
output would just be a union of like added with like all of the properties or removed where it's just the ID, and then the builder would respond to that.
Yeah, so I guess this would be yeah, that would make our plugins a bit annoying though.
Well, we could filter. We could like could pre-filter the source that's coming in. The
Yeah, I
only
guess if we change that transform API to be like transform the
doesn't feel good.
or I guess we just have a separate stream for removals.
Maybe we have like an additions and a deletion stream, and then we know exactly like what, and then we just run them both in two separate like fibers.
Yeah, I think this feels a bit cleaner. And then
You can default removals to just an empty stream, right?
yeah, stream.never empty. So we track the errors for additions. And then removals will default to never.
Just need to default removals.
Not sure how much sense errors and removals makes, but that's fine.
I guess we should probably. The only time you'd have an error. No, I guess whatever. We'll just see.
Additions, removals. Yeah, let's make it never.
Because we can just die in the case of issues with deletions.
Yeah. Watchers. I guess I only want the watchers in development mode.
Yeah, I mean, in a development setting, you want it. Like if you run Contentlayer's CLI with the watch argument, then you want file watchers. Otherwise, you don't. So it actually should probably be a config.
I guess for development mode, if we use like a context reference. And then the source plugins can just like pick up on the flag. What module would that belong to? Config?
Maybe? No.
No,
I think
configs for the...
yeah, configs for config. Maybe there should be like a settings module.
Settings. No, that's wrong. Perfect. Context. We use div mode, then context dot reference.
This is actually watch mode. Because the CLI will probably you probably have a watch flag.
And that will have a default value of bounce. Oops.
I think you still have dev mode in the string ID. This could probably be something we turn into a like settings reference at some point. If there's more settings we pass in.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. And then source. We would use that in here. I guess it still doesn't quite solve the problem that in watch mode we need to know when everything's finished.
For what purpose?
I guess if we just debounce the additions and then what's its idle right the index? I don't know. We need a way of collecting all of the known IDs.
Yeah, I feel like if we debound additions and probably also deletions, because deletions will affect the index as well.
Yeah.
I feel like that should be fine for the moment. You
Yeah,
can
okay.
try to think of a better way to track like the like a build finishing. The thing is, like in watch mode, technically the build never finishes.
Yeah.
Like you emit X number of documents, and then after a period, you want the index to be updated, I guess. The other thing is we can just, I mean, we can eliminate the index and try to think of a better way to do cache invalidation, but
Well, we need to generate a list somewhere. We remove that now. We need to spin off a
The
new
other thing about
fiber
this,
for removals.
the other thing about having this as separate fibers is that debalancing is going to happen on a different schedule. Like if you debalance both additions and removals, then we could end up where like one stream is currently in the middle of a debalance and the other is writing index and they just ping pong. I mean, I don't think that would be like really that frequent or common, but it's a possibility.
I think. What are we doing here? Victor. Yeah, this timing doesn't really make sense anymore if it's going to be an infinite stream. Because you don't know when the build's actually finished. I guess if this actually does end.
Yeah, I mean, if the stream does end, you'll get the logs, right?
Yeah. We just need to add a finalizer to make sure the IDs are written at the end. Okay, well, if we documents type on them. I'm just missing a parentheses. So if this stream finishes, then we want to clean up. I guess we can just move this time stuff in. I mean, they might still be useful in the case where you're not in watch mode.
100%. If you're just building, maybe as part of CI or like whatever, you'll get these logs.
So I think in here, if we maybe just set up like an ID mailbox. It can just be void. We just need a signal. And every time an ID is added or removed, we add a signal. If IDs and then now we can walk a fiber for the removals. The config. Stream.flatmap. Source removals. Yeah, I guess the IDs will be unique for every source, so that's fine. Congrats, unbounded. Run for each. So this is every ID that has been removed now. So we can go fetch dot sync. If and then the free for that. I guess rendering types only needs to happen once per the config.
Yeah.
And we are already in an effect context here, so
Yeah, because if the config changes, this whole thing gets rerun.
yeah. Okay, so the only thing left to do is add a finalizer to ensure if we're not in watch mode, this will run through and we will have collected all the IDs, but we might be in a debounce state. I guess if we get to the end of here, what we can do is effect dot and then ID mailbox dot end and then run the index generation in an uninterruptible region. I guess that will need to be on exit.
And how is index generation going to work in the situation where we are in watch mode?
So it'll be in a debounced stream.
That's watching the reading from the
yeah.
mailbox.
So we quickly add that now. Mailbox up to stream. H. And then here we just go storage dot right IDs, and then we affect for here.
And then we basically do the same exact thing in the
And then in
finalizer.
here we go stream dot debounce. How long should we wait?
I don't know,
1
100
second.
millis. 1 second, it's fine too. 500 millis.
We just want to make sure at this point we've had enough time for, 500 is probably fine. Okay. So now it's just a case of getting the interruption set up properly. So if a new config gets built, we kind of just want to abort everything, including this. So maybe if we grab this exit and then put it in here.
Dunning a mailbox with an exit does what?
It finishes the mailbox. If the exit was successful, then this ends it cleanly. If it's a failure, then it sends the failure to the mailbox, which will terminate this. But if you, I think that'll work. Or what we could do is, I can't remember what shutdown does. Does it do a clean exit shutdown? Shutdown clears all the messages, and it finishes with an exit void. Okay. I think this will work then. So we go back to our mailbox and just set the error to any. So if this gets interrupted, this exit will now be an interrupted exit, which will then forward it onto the mailbox and then terminate this fiber. So we can now put this in a uninterruptible region. Which will ensure that if this was a clean exit, it will run till completion. And if it was a bad exit, then it will just kill the stream.
Makes sense. So the stream will be like stopped essentially, but the fiber will exit cleanly.
Yes. I wonder.
I think I'm almost out of time, Tim.
Okay. This is just a signal, really, so I think this makes sense. I think the only way to test it is to try it out.
Let's run it, and then I have to head out, unfortunately.
There is. Well, we haven't set up file watches, so
Maybe we'll save it for next time then, where we can actually like let's put it in the to-do file to set up like the file watchers for writing IDs and everything.
yeah, we
for
need
our
to
sources.
set up this write ID thing. The to-dos. Set up content choose in the source. Generate index file from IDs.
I hope everybody enjoyed our session. Yeah, I guess until next time, where we'll actually be doing some like file watching stuff. But for now, cheers everybody. I hope you had a good time, and we'll see you next week.